Welcome to this 365 Freedom Strategy session. Today we're breaking down the mechanics of the time belief reset and why your biggest business bottleneck is your belief that you're running out of time.
Yeah, and that belief is, it's incredibly insidious.
It really is. I mean, think about your calendar right now. Just think about the way your chest literally tightens when you look at, say, a Tuesday afternoon block that is just packed wall to wall with meetings, deliverables, unread messages.
Right, you feel that physical constriction.
Exactly. But what if I told you that the panic you feel in that specific moment has absolutely nothing to do with the clock on the wall?
Nothing at all.
It has everything to do with a biological lie that your brain is currently telling you.
Huh.
So our mission today is to completely deconstruct the architecture of your time beliefs.
Which is so critical because we are operating from one specific guiding principle for this entire session, and it's this. Your time expands when your beliefs stop shrinking it.
Your time expands when your beliefs stop shrinking it.
Ugh.
I love that.
It's the absolute foundation of operational clarity for any leader. We constantly observe founders attempting to, optimize their output by endlessly rearranging their calendars.
Right. Downloading a dozen different apps.
Exactly. You purchase new project management software, you color code your weeks, you attempt to squeeze maybe another 10% of efficiency out of a Friday afternoon.
But it never actually works, does it?
No, because you are trying to solve a problem with the wrong tools. There is a fundamental misdiagnosis of the core issue here. Before you can fix a broken schedule, you really have to realize the schedule is not the actual problem.
The schedule is just a symptom.
Precisely. The pressure you feel is not generated by the passage of minutes. It is generated entirely by the internal narrative you have constructed about those minutes.
Okay, let me challenge that premise early on because I can hear founders pushing back right now.
Sure, go for it.
If time is an objective, measurable resource, I mean, it's just seconds, minutes, and hours ticking away consistently, how exactly does a mental belief actually, shrink it in a practical, physical sense?
That's the logical question, right?
Yeah, because we all have the exact same 24 hours in a day. 60 minutes is 60 minutes, regardless of who is watching the clock.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like we are arguing against the basic physics of time here.
Well, we aren't challenging the physics of time at all. The clock is constant.
Okay.
What changes is the cognitive processing of the person moving through that time. When you operate with a core belief that time is scarce, that you are perpetually running out of it, that the day is just slipping away from you, you trigger a low-grade, constant stress response in your body.
So it's a physiological reaction.
Absolutely. Your nervous system interprets a perceived lack of time the exact same way it interprets a lack of oxygen or a lack of capital. It perceives a direct threat to survival.
Wow. So the brain literally doesn't differentiate between, hey, I'm going to miss this quarterly deadline, and I am actively being chased by a predator in the woods.
The alarm bells ring the exact same way.
That is wild. The exact same way.
They ring with the exact same chemical intensity. Cortisol just floods the system. And when your brain perceives a threat, your perception physically and cognitively narrows.
Like tunnel vision.
Literally tunnel vision.
Yeah.
This is the biological reality of the fight or flight response. When you believe time is inherently scarce, your cognitive bandwidth literally shrinks.
You just lose the big picture entirely.
You do. You lose access to the peripheral awareness that is absolutely required for high-level problem solving, for long-term strategic planning, and lateral creative thinking.
Because you're just surviving.
Right. You become so hyper-focused on the immediate perceived threat, which is the ticking clock, that you create an atmosphere of artificial urgency, even when the actual situation in front of you does not require it.
So as a founder, you are essentially manufacturing a crisis in your own mind. And then you're responding to that manufactured crisis with real-world panic.
Which leads to terrible operational outcomes.
I bet.
You rush. You make hasty, poorly calibrated decisions. Consider what happens when you operate in that narrowed, panicked state, right? You send a half-thought-out email to your team because you feel you don't have the, say, 5 minutes required to write a clear one.
Oh, we've all done that. I'll just fire this off real quick.
Exactly. And that vague email creates immense confusion across 3 different departments.
Right, because nobody knows what you actually meant.
So your team then has to send 5 more emails to clarify your original message, pull you into a sudden sync meeting just to figure out what you wanted, and basically halt their own momentum.
Man. So your belief that you lacked time caused you to behave in a way that literally destroyed the physical time you actually did have.
You hit the nail on the head. You destroyed your own time.
So handing a hyper-anxious founder a more efficient calendar app in that state is, I mean, it's just giving them a tool to panic more systematically.
That's a great way to put it. You cannot outschedule a scarcity mindset. It's impossible.
Because the baseline is broken.
Right. If your baseline belief is that there is never enough time, you will subconsciously fill whatever productivity system you adopt with an impossible volume of tasks.
Why do we do that, though? Just to feel productive.
You do it to temporarily soothe the anxiety of the scarcity. It's a coping mechanism. But when the system inevitably fails because the workload is mathematically impossible, it provides confirmation bias.
See? I knew I didn't have enough time.
Exactly. It validates your original flawed belief. You have constructed a complete self-fulfilling prophecy orchestrated entirely by your own psychological architecture.
Okay, let's move from the theory and look at what this actually does to a person in the real world. Because we saw this exact shrinking time phenomenon play out with a specific client recently.
We did, yeah.
A founder who essentially lived in a state of being chronically behind. She would start her day at, 5 in the morning?
5 in the morning, responding to emails before her feet even hit the floor.
Right. And she would just grind until midnight. And yet she reported to us that her days never, ever felt spacious.
The chronically behind state is an incredibly common baseline operating system for so many leaders.
It really is. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has a massive hole in the bottom.
That's a perfect analogy.
I mean, starting earlier and working later is just pouring more water into the bucket. But the belief that you're fundamentally out of time, that's the hole itself.
It is the hole, and it feels like motion, but it is actually a form of paralysis. Let's really examine the mechanical failure of her schedule manipulation here.
Okay.
Logically, if you are behind on your workload, applying more hours to the problem should allow you to catch up, right?
That's what we're all taught. Work harder, close the gap.
You put in a 14-hour day, you close the gap. But for you, the listener, and for this founder we worked with, it never works.
Never.
And the reason it never works is because behind is not a mathematical reality in this specific context. It is an emotional state masquerading as a logistical problem.
Oh, wow. An emotional state masquerading as a logistical problem. Because the finish line is basically a mirage.
It's completely illusory.
The moment she gets close to it, she pushes it further away just to maintain that familiar feeling of panic.
That's exactly what happens. When we analyzed her actual schedule, her obligations, and her deliverables, it was full, certainly, but it was not unusually so.
Right. It was a normal executive workload.
She was not managing an objectively impossible workload that required 19 hours a day of labor. The pressure she was experiencing was not originating from the actual demands of her clients.
It wasn't the market.
No, it wasn't coming from the needs of her executive team either. She had literally built a pressure cooker inside her own head just by telling herself she was already behind before the day even began.
It really is the tragedy of the unspacious day. You trap yourself in a cognitive loop where catching up is mathematically impossible.
Because the rules of the game are rigged against you, by you.
Right. The moment you cross one item off the list, the scarcity belief demands that you immediately scan the horizon for the next perceived threat. There is zero celebration.
There is zero pause.
None.
There is no integration of the work you just completed. There is no spaciousness to evaluate if the next task is actually the right task to tackle.
Your brain is constantly flashing a warning light. Danger, we are running out of time.
Consequently, that 14-hour day becomes a marathon of defensive maneuvers. You are merely blocking punches rather than executing a proactive strategic vision.
And when you are merely executing defensive maneuvers all day, you aren't actually driving the business forward.
Not at all.
You are burning immense amounts of personal and professional capital just to maintain a baseline. You are treading water furiously just to keep from drowning, all while convincing yourself you are swimming toward a destination.
Which is the very definition of operational stagnation.
Yeah.
This client firmly believed she was working incredibly hard to get ahead. But the architecture of her time beliefs dictated her reality. She was actively, daily, constructing a business environment where she would always feel behind.
Because time beliefs shape time behavior.
And behavior shapes business reality every single time.
So once that core belief is established, this really ingrained, undeniable sense of I am always behind, there is never enough time, it triggers a massive cascade of destructive behaviors in a business environment.
It's a domino effect.
It is. Believing you lack time leads directly to rushing. It leads to overcommitting, multitasking, completely abandoning your personal boundaries.
Saying yes to everything.
Yes, saying yes to highly draining, low-return tasks. And all of this is an attempt to basically outrun the feeling of not enough.
It is the mechanics of sabotage. And it is vital for you, the listener, to understand that this sabotage feels like productivity while you are in the middle of it.
It really does. It disguises itself brilliantly as ambition and dedication.
It feels like you're being a hero.
Right. But wait, let me introduce some necessary tension here, because I hear what you're saying. But if we tell a startup founder to just, stop working so hard, they're going to laugh us right out of the room.
Oh, absolutely they will.
Because the market demands speed. There are seasons of immense workload where getting a product to launch practically requires overcommitting. So, as an expert, when does necessary hustle actually cross the line into active self-sabotage?
That's the critical question. We have to make a very sharp distinction here. We are not advocating for a lack of effort, nor are we denying the reality of high-demand business cycles.
Sometimes you just have to push.
Right. The boundary between a required intensive workload and pathological overcommitment comes down entirely to the driver of your behavior.
The why behind the hustle.
Exactly. Are you taking on a massive workload because there is a clear, strategic, high-leverage opportunity in the market that requires a temporary surge in your team's capacity?
Which is normal.
Which is totally normal. Or are you overcommitting because empty space on your calendar triggers on unbearable anxiety?
It's the difference between moving toward an objective and running away from a feeling.
That is precisely it. That phrase, trying to outrun the feeling of not enough, describes a literal flight response.
Back to the fight or flight we talked about earlier.
Yes. You sabotage your own focus by cluttering your schedule. You use busyness as a shield against the anxiety of scarcity.
A shield.
Think about it. If you are moving frantically, if you are answering 100 emails an hour, if you are sitting in back-to-back Zoom meetings from sunrise to sunset, you do not have to sit in the quiet.
And confront the quiet.
You don't have to confront the terrifying thought that you might be prioritizing the wrong things entirely. You don't have to confront the possibility that your business model might actually have fatal structural flaws.
Easy, this just becomes an anesthetic.
It is the ultimate corporate anesthetic. It numbs the pain of uncertainty.
That's a harsh truth.
It is, but look at multitasking, for instance. Neurologically, we know multitasking is a complete myth.
Right. The brain can't actually do two cognitive tasks at once.
Exactly. You are simply rapidly switching your attention back and forth between different contexts, which heavily degrades cognitive performance and significantly increases your error rate.
But we all do it anyway.
But when you are driven by a time scarcity belief, you will multitask compulsively. Why? Because it creates the physiological illusion of velocity.
It feels fast.
It feels like you are defeating the clock, even though the objective data proves you're actually degrading the quality of your output.
And the cost of abandoning boundaries just compounds that damage. I mean, when you are caught in that scarcity loop, you lose the ability to filter incoming requests.
Your filter is gone.
Every single ping on your phone, every request from a minor vendor, every tiny client issue feels equally urgent.
Because when time is perceived as scarce, discernment vanishes. The psychological ability to say no to a request requires a baseline level of neurological safety.
It requires you to not be in a panic state.
It requires you to genuinely believe that if you decline a low-value opportunity today, you will still have the time, the capacity, and the resources to capture a high-value opportunity tomorrow.
Right. But if you think time is running out, you grab whatever's in front of you.
Exactly. When you abandon your boundaries out of sheer panic, you fill your operational capacity with low-yield, highly draining tasks.
Which leads directly to decision fatigue. I mean, by 3 in the afternoon, you are making suboptimal, potentially disastrous choices on major strategic issues.
Because your tank is empty.
Because you spent your entire morning frantically accommodating minor, draining requests out of a subconscious fear of falling behind.
You have exhausted your executive function on the trivial, leaving absolutely nothing for the vital.
Wow.
Which brings us to a really crucial technical distinction about pacing. If we know that rushing is a form of sabotage, we must clearly define what healthy, effective pacing actually looks like.
We need a better model.
We have to differentiate between the tight, reactive state of hurrying and a grounded, spacious pace, which is the exact definition of high-leverage motion.
It sounds like sitting in your car in neutral with your foot slammed all the way down on the gas pedal.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to picture it.
The engine is just screaming, the temperature gauge is spiking, the whole chassis is vibrating, and you are burning through fuel at an alarming rate. But you are getting absolutely zero traction.
You aren't moving an inch forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
High leverage motion is taking your foot off the gas for a second, shifting the car into gear, and then accelerating. It might sound quieter, the RPMs might be lower, but you are actually propelling the vehicle down the road.
That captures the physics of the situation perfectly. Let's define hurrying structurally within your business.
Okay, let's break it down.
Hurrying is characterized by intense physical and mental tightness. You can literally see it in a person's posture. You can hear it in the clipped, breathless cadence of their speech.
Everything is short and sharp.
It is a highly reactive state. You are not initiating action. You are merely parrying incoming stimuli like a boxer trapped in the corner of the ring. You stack tasks too tightly, leaving zero margin for error, zero margin for technical glitches, and zero transition time.
Everything just becomes a fire drill.
Everything is a five-alarm fire, but there is no actual smoke. It is driven purely by the fear of running out of time. And the collateral damage of this state is that it creates massive institutional friction.
How does it affect the rest of the company?
Well, when you as the leader are redlining in neutral, your entire team feels that vibration. They absorb your panic, and their own cognitive bandwidth begins to shrink in response.
It's contagious?
Highly contagious. Now, contrast that with high leverage motion. This isn't moving slowly for the sake of being slow. That's a huge misconception.
Right, it's not about being lazy.
Not at all. This is a state characterized by thoughtful, deliberate choices. You are acting, not reacting. You utilize realistic time blocks, acknowledging the biological fact that high-level cognitive work requires ramp-up time to get into a flow state and cool-down periods to synthesize the information.
You intentionally engineer space between commitments.
Exactly. The driver of this motion is alignment with your priorities, not a fearful obsession with the clock.
The paradox that consistently trips leaders up here, and we really need to completely dismantle this right now, is the deeply ingrained myth that hurry equals productivity.
It is the biggest lie in modern business.
Right. The question the listener might be asking right now is, how do I functionally accomplish more volume by moving slower and more deliberately?
Yeah.
Because the math of that is incredibly hard for a high-performing type A personality to just accept.
Oh, they fight it tooth and nail.
Because it feels so counterintuitive. Slower means less. Faster means more.
That's only true if you define volume incorrectly. If volume strictly means the raw number of emails sent or the number of discrete minor tasks checked off a to-do list, then sure, hurrying might temporarily win that metric.
But that's a terrible metric.
Exactly. In a business context, volume must mean the total amount of value created. You accomplish significantly more value by moving deliberately because you drastically reduce your error rate.
Whoa.
You eliminate the massive amount of rework that inevitably stems from hasty, panicked decisions.
Right. You stop having to send the third email to clarify the massive mess you made in the first email. You gain time back by simply doing it right the first time.
Furthermore, high leverage motion preserves your cognitive endurance. A leader who is constantly hurrying burns out their executive function by midday.
They're toast by 2 p.m.
They are operating on fumes by the time the critical afternoon meetings occur. A leader moving deliberately, however, maintains sharp, clear decision-making capabilities well into the late afternoon.
They pace themselves.
They can tackle complex, high-stakes problems because they have not exhausted their nervous system dealing with low-stakes friction all morning. Moving slower and more deliberately in the micro moments allows you to move exponentially faster in your macro strategy.
You are shifting into gear and applying actual torque to the road rather than just revving the engine in the driveway.
Beautifully said.
So, having diagnosed the bottleneck, this incredibly insidious scarcity belief, and having clearly defined the correct high-leverage motion required to actually move forward, we need to outline the exact mechanics of the reset.
Let's get into the tactical application.
Right. How do we actually go into the operating system and fix the code? The strategy relies on replacing the scarcity belief with a completely new architecture. The new operational premise is, I have enough time for what matters.
I have enough time for what matters.
And this isn't about pretending to have unlimited hours. It's about trusting your own ability to make thoughtful, really hard choices.
This is the pivot point of the entire strategy. You see, you cannot simply delete a core belief. The human brain abhors a vacuum. You must replace the flawed belief with a structurally superior one. The old belief, I never have enough time, is structurally unsound because it completely removes your agency. It frames you as a helpless victim of the clock, just battered by external demands.
You're just a passenger.
Exactly. The new belief, I have enough time for what matters, restores your agency. It puts you immediately back in the driver's seat of your own operational capacity.
But how do we ensure this doesn't just devolve into toxic positivity? You know the trap, right?
Oh, I know it well.
The sort of empty affirmation culture where you just repeat a calming phrase in the mirror while your business literally burns down around you. How does a founder functionally adopt, I have enough time for what matters, when they walk into their office and there is a massive mountain of immediate contractual deliverables staring them right in the face?
It's a fair challenge. We prevent it from becoming toxic positivity by anchoring the belief strictly in operational reality.
Less so.
Toxic positivity is delusional. It completely ignores real-world constraints. Looking at a massive pile of work and saying, I have all the time in the world, when you have a board meeting in 3 hours, that is toxic positivity.
It's just a lie.
It is factually incorrect and operationally dangerous. It is lying to yourself to temporarily soothe your ego.
A grounded belief reset, however, acknowledges the constraint, but completely changes your relationship to it. I have enough time for what matters is not a fluffy affirmation. It is a statement of strategic prioritization.
It forces a brutal and entirely necessary confrontation with the phrase, what matters. That phrase is the operational filter.
I see.
If you evaluate your mountain of deliverables and realize you physically do not have the hours in the day to execute all of them, then mathematically they cannot all be what matters most.
Something has to give.
Some of those tasks are lower priority. Some of them represent dangerous scope creep. Some of them are the direct result of poor delegation on your part.
It forces you to stratify the workload. It demands that you identify the vital few over the trivial many.
Exactly. The new belief immediately yields hard, tactical behavioral outputs. First, it forces you to say no to misaligned tasks.
Because if you don't, you violate the premise.
Right. If you operate from the premise that you only have time for what matters, you must actively and consistently reject what does not matter. The word no becomes your absolute most frequently used strategic tool.
What's the second output?
Second, it leads to implementing realistic time blocks. You stop pretending that reviewing a complex legal contract will take 15 minutes just to make your daily calendar look manageable.
We all do that. We shrink the time block to make it fit.
Which is sabotage. You have to allocate the 2 solid hours it actually requires. And by allocating those 2 hours, you are forced to remove something else from your day.
And the third tactical output is consciously engineering space between commitments. You intentionally build in the buffer zones.
You build in the transition time. You recognize that the spaces between the tasks are just as vital as the tasks themselves, because that empty space is where the cognitive resetting happens.
That's where your brain breathes.
That is where the actual synthesis of information occurs. By adopting the belief, I have enough time for what matters, you are transitioning from being a passive victim of a crowded schedule to becoming the active architect of a strategic calendar.
Which leads us to the final culmination of this whole process, what you and your business look like on the other side of this strategic reset. The results are clear. Your choices shift, your operational pace changes, your attention softens, and your day actually opens up.
Time beliefs shape time behavior.
Right. But let's look closely at that concept of your attention softening. Because in a highly competitive, cutthroat business environment, the word soften sounds like a profound weakness.
I get that pushback constantly.
I bet if you tell a hyper-competitive, hard-driving founder that their attention is going to soften, they're going to push back hard. What does a softened day actually mean for a hard-driving founder's bottom line?
The vocabulary we use to describe these operational states matters immensely. We must translate softening into authoritative, functional terminology. We are absolutely not talking about becoming passive, lackadaisical, or losing your competitive edge.
That's a misinterpretation.
It's a complete misunderstanding of the mechanism. When we say your attention and your day soften, we are talking about the complete elimination of frantic friction.
It's kind of like annealing metal in metallurgy, right?
Let's explain that.
Well, if you harden a piece of steel too much, it becomes brittle. It might hold a sharp edge momentarily, but the second it takes a hard impact, it shatters. To make the metal genuinely strong, you actually have to heat it and soften it. That process of softening makes it pliable, resilient, and capable of absorbing massive shock without breaking.
That is the exact physical property we are aiming to create in your operational psychology.
It's about resilience.
Right. When you operate from a state of constant time scarcity, you are brittle. Your schedule is brittle. One unexpected client crisis, one deleter slight, one vendor error, and your entire day shatters into a million pieces because it was stacked too tightly and driven entirely by panic.
There is zero flex in the system.
None. A softened day means you have intentionally introduced flexibility, resilience, and shock absorption into your operational model. It means incredible clarity. It means absolute precision in your decision-making.
It means the absolute absence of reactive panic.
Exactly. When your attention softens, it means you have stopped glaring intensely at the ticking clock with tunnel vision, and you have finally broadened your gaze to observe the entire strategic landscape.
Your peripheral vision is restored.
And because it is restored, you can finally see the micro-shifts happening in your market. You can pick up on the subtle, unspoken cues from your leadership team during a meeting. You become a vastly superior observer of reality, and consequently, a vastly superior decision maker.
So softening is actually an aggressive strategic advantage. It allows you to absorb impact and redirect momentum without breaking your stride.
It is the ultimate strategic lever. And this brings us right back to our central thesis. Time beliefs shape time behavior. Your behavior determines your output, and your output determines your bottom line.
It's a direct chain reaction.
If you are operating a brittle, friction-heavy, panic-driven organization, you are artificially capping your own growth. Taking control of this foundational belief shifting from an architecture of scarcity to an architecture of grounded capacity is the highest leverage move you can make.
Because it fixes the root cause.
It optimizes the operator, which inevitably optimizes the entire enterprise.
This session has traced the pipeline from invisible mental constraint all the way down to tangible, measurable business friction and mapped the exact pivot required to actually resolve it. Before we wrap up today, what is the final extrapolative thought you need to leave the listener with?
Well, if you understand that your beliefs about time dictate your physical behavior with time, you must recognize that this exact same mechanism applies across your entire operational landscape.
To everything.
Yes. So the question you must ponder long after this session ends is this. What other supposedly scarce resources in your business are actually just reflections of your internal narratives? Is your bandwidth, your capital, or your team's capacity actually shrinking because of the objective reality of the market? Or is it shrinking purely because of the architecture of your beliefs?
If you're ready to reshape your time story and find real traction, visit 365 Freedom online to join the community. This has been a 365 Freedom Strategy session.